What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Luke here for our weekly DFS live stream. Obviously, this time for the Masters. I was able to get out, play some golf myself today, but now I'm ready to watch the pros go ahead and tee it up. And here we're going to go over the weather. We're going to go over my player pool projections, any live questions that you have. We'll touch on some strategy at the end. So whether it's for large field GPPs or for cash contests, pretty much just everything you need to know for this weekend. So sit back, strap in, and of course, if there's any questions you have along the way, do not be shy at all to go ahead and ask. So we're going to start with a little bit of a look at the weather, which you can see it looks pretty nasty. This is for the airport in Augusta. There's not many wind stations up there. It's, a city, but it's not a massive city. So as a result, we do have to look at a wind report that is off-site, and you can see there's relatively strong winds for the entire day. As early as 8 a.m., there's 7 to 17 mile an hour gusts, and then for the rest of the day in that 13 to 15 mile an hour sustained range, which is not going to cause these players a ton of trouble, but it is much more than what you're used to seeing at the Masters year in and year out. And then in terms of the gusts, you have 22 to 23. You can see 26 miles an hour gusts towards the afternoon. Those are going to cause problems, right? Whenever it gets gusty, you see that type of effect on the course. You're going to see some guys miss these greens. And of course, the penalty for missing greens at Augusta is massive. Now, something else to mention is, of course, the weather they've had for the last 2 days. On Tuesday, they had a ton of rain in the area. And even just today on Wednesday, they had to shut down play. They had a few storms come through the area. And as early as tomorrow morning, you can see there's a little bit of rain in the forecast. They're also expecting some storms overnight, which means they can't run the sub-air system. That's something that I did get asked. A couple sharp people out there mentioned the sub-air system, which I was also trying to keep my eye on. But if they have rain overnight, they unfortunately can't run those systems. So hopefully there's a little bit of a stretch where they can overnight to try and take some of the moisture out of this golf course, because it is going to be extremely gettable on Thursday. So even with these winds, I would expect the scoring to be much better than usual, where if we head over to Data Golf just to get an idea, the average score here for our Masters is right around 1.05 over par per round. Of course, the better players in the field are still going to be able to take it to maybe the teens under par in terms of a winner. But most of the players in the field will be shooting right around par or even over par. With these windy conditions tomorrow, I would expect that to be the case. So even though it will be a little bit softer, it's still going to be tough with that wind, right? That's not something that we usually see at Augusta National. And there are quite a few tree-lined fairways, which will shield the players from wind from time to time. It also makes it extremely hard to gauge the wind, right? What direction it's moving, how strong it is, because you can't feel it at ground level. So, there's a lot of giving and taking going on when it comes to the weather here at Augusta National. So that will definitely be interesting to take a look at. The main thing I want to talk about with the weather, though, is a little bit more in line with how wet it's going to be. It brings a lot more players into play. Now, typically when it's running firm and fast at Augusta, no matter how good you're hitting the ball, you're going to be out of position from time to time. That's just how it works out when you have those firm, bouncy greens. You're going to get a few bad breaks and, of course, some pretty fortunate breaks from time to time as well. Now, when that's happening, right, you have to be able to get up and down. You have to be a well-rounded player. Tomorrow, when we're going to have much softer conditions, at least from what we can tell as of right now, every once in a while we get surprised by Augusta National's ability to go out and dry out their golf course. You would expect there to be darts, right? People that are just on with their approach play aren't going to have to worry about those bad breaks. That means that guys like Viktor Hovland, who for 4-round stuff, I'm probably not considering, tomorrow might be considering him for showdown, because it's going to be a completely different golf course. And I think Jordan Spieth really summed it up best during one of his interviews today as soon as the par 3 contest ended. He said, tomorrow it's going to be gettable. It's going to be soft. You're going to see guys go low tomorrow. When Justin Rose ended up taking it to 7 under par, it's going to be very similar conditions to that round. But even in that Masters, it got harder throughout the weekend. And the main thing that Jordan said is, because it's going to be so windy tomorrow, so windy overnight going Thursday into Friday, you're going to see a completely different golf course on Friday. It's going to completely dry out. It's not supposed to rain after tomorrow morning, which means they can run those sub-air systems, which means as early as Friday morning, the first guys to tee off, this could play like a normal master. So this could be just the outlier day tomorrow. So again, for showdown, I do think there could be a little bit of an edge there to exploit with just some of the better approach players. I mean, Tom Hoge comes to mind. He can play target practice out there. Viktor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, even Justin Thomas, he absolutely eats it alive when it's super wet conditions out there. And of course, guys that are relatively long off the tee will also see an advantage there. Let's look at Friday. You can see it's relatively similar, though there's slightly better conditions in the morning. So that's why a lot of people are mentioning a PM AM split, which we're going to talk about here in a second because I'm not really sure it's something you have to look at. It's kind of built into the player pool. Again, we'll talk about that. Slightly easier conditions in the morning, just 5 to 10 miles an hour sustained winds. And then in the afternoon, it gets upwards of 16. You can see for the entire afternoon with gusts in the 25 to 30 mile an hour range. So certainly in the afternoon, it's going to be very windy, much like it is for Thursday. So if you are going to have any type of a split, like I kind of hinted at, it would be the PM AM, right? So even though you do have the windy conditions on Thursday afternoon, they're much more benign than what we're going to have for Friday afternoon. And then you get that period in the morning there on Friday morning where there's almost no wind. Here's the issue with that. We don't really have a PM AM wave here. We have continuous tee times from the morning the whole way until all of them tee off in the afternoon. So there's not that 2 to 3 hour gap where you have the quote unquote waves going out and that type of thing. So trying to go ahead and, let's say, numerically quantify that is much, much harder, right? Because it's not black and white, right? You're going to have guys that are teeing off in the middle of the day. How do you treat them, right? It becomes a much harder exercise to go ahead and use. Plus, pretty much all the best players in the field, I mean, outside of Tiger Woods, who's teeing off really early in the morning, are teeing off at least at midday, if not towards the afternoon, which means you're going to be playing a lot of those guys anyways. I mean, especially some of the really popular value picks, they're playing in the later half of the day. So you're going to see a ton of ownership already in that wave. So if you're just playing the normal game with DFS, you're going to have a lot more of those guys anyways. So I don't think it's something that you have to worry about. You're going to see people obsess over the wind because of what happened at the Players Championship. We knew going into the week at the Players, it was going to be a unique situation, especially because what we saw going in the weekend with the wind. This is not that same situation. You have continuous wind, continuous weather on Thursday and Friday. And even if you saw any type of a delay into Saturday, which at this point, there is no evidence that's going to happen. There's not any thunderstorms in the forecast. And hopefully that can hold on, right? Things can change from time to time. Then we might be able to talk about something because on Saturday it is going to be a little bit calmer conditions, but there's no evidence that's going to happen. So for anyone worried about the weather out there, I would not be obsessing about it. And if there's going to be anything to focus on at all in terms of a weather impact, it would be that on Thursday, you can target guys that aren't so good around the green. It's going to be a little bit easier conditions than what we're going to have for the rest of the week. But other than that, nothing that I think you should really be going in on. You can see Colin's already down here in chat. He says, oh, she going to be windy? Absolutely. And yeah, you're going to see some high scores over the first 2 days. You could definitely see a 3 or 4 over cut line. I'm definitely here for it. And I think Tiger Woods is as well. I think that's exactly what he wants. He wants it to be as difficult as humanly possible. Let's go ahead and move on into the player pool now, guys. And I'll remind you, if there's anyone you want me to do a deep dive on, just go ahead and throw their name down there in chat. I'm more than willing to do so. Gonna make this full screen here so you guys can get a good view, and we'll hop on into it. One thing I'll say is I'm dealing with a really nasty migraine net right now, so I'm doing my best to fake it, kind of just bring the energy level up. So if you feel a little bit of a lower energy, that's why. I played golf today. It was 95 degrees down here. Drank like 8 bottles of water. Didn't matter. Just it's going to ravage you when you're out there for 7-8 hours. So I'm doing my best to keep it together. But let's start at the top of the board. So Scotty Scheffler at $11,000. Talked about him in the fades video. It's not like I hate him here at all. He's the #1 player in the world for a reason. It's just you can't play everyone up top. I much rather go to guys like Rahm, JT, Morikawa. You can see JT I still have in my player pool despite being chalk here. So we'll definitely going to have to talk about that because you guys know I'll fade chalk at any sign that I can. And with Justin Thomas, there's nothing there to fade. Going to be fading guys like Victor Holland, but I'd much rather go to guys like Colin Morikawa, Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, even the guys in the 9K range, right? So it's hard to pay up $11,000 for a guy like Scotty Scheffler, who honestly, I'm not sure if he's really the #1 player in the world, right? A lot of that's just mathematics based. I understand that he's had this great stretch of golf, but it's because he's put them up in such quick succession that he even ascended to that rank. It's in the algorithm. It's kind of like the Tiger effect when he was winning 4 out of every 5 events. They wanted to weigh that accordingly. This week, if Jon Rahm finishes in the top 5, he takes over that position. If Colin Morikawa finishes in the top 10, he takes over that position. Hovland can become world #1 this week, and I believe there's 2 other players that can also become world #1 this week. So it's not like he has a stranglehold on world #1. And I heard a lot of people talking about him this week. They're like, it's world #1. You have to play him. It doesn't matter his ownership. Doesn't matter his price. Doesn't matter he's coming in off wins, so on and so forth. Guys, this isn't Tiger Woods. This isn't somebody who's like the clear number one in the world. After this week, he's not going to be world number one. That's not a hot take by any means. There's just so many guys climbing at his throat right there. So even though I feel really good for the guy, right, he's got some problems on bent grass. I know we talked about that during the fades video. I also know I talked about the fact that he doesn't have good finishes here at Augusta National, but he can really put all of that aside. It doesn't really matter. It's just the fact that you can't play everyone up top. I'm not as sold on him as I am the other players, and you're going to have to get used to that this week. Everyone in this field is a stud. You're going to want to play every single player in this field. You just can't. It's like guys like Dustin Johnson, I can't fit him in my player pool. I love him this week. Of course, he won here during the November Masters, which a lot of people are putting an asterisk on. I'm not. I think that's just as legitimate as a win as other wins. Just don't think we should be using it for a shots gained analysis, right? Because it was a little bit different. But it's hard to write these type of guys off, but you have to this week. You're going to have to pick your spots. And in terms of all the studs up top, you know, the guys that are 10K plus, I think you might be able to play 3-4 at a max if you're fading somebody like Justin Thomas, who's a huge ownership level right there. It's tough, right? So before we get through this going like, oh, why don't you like somebody like Scheffler? Like, oh, I can't believe you're not playing Victor Hovland this week. Or, oh, I can't believe you're fading Cameron Smith, your guy. You can't play everyone, okay? Get over it. Just understand you're going to have to do that yourself. Particularly if you're only playing like 20 lineups this week, you're going to have to cross off most of the guys on your list. So if you're 150 maxing like me, you can get away with playing almost half the guys in this range. But if you're not, you're going to be in an even more uncomfortable situation this week. So you just gotta embrace that. You got to be willing to take that on. Let's talk about Jon Rahm. He's a core pick for me. You can see the projected cut rate is 96.42%. You can pretty much make that 100% for most of these guys up top. Just obviously trying to keep it a little bit more realistic with some of these metrics, but all these guys are going to end up making the cut up top. I'd be surprised if any of them missed the cut. The only one I think has a legit chance to miss the cut, Hideki, because of his neck. I think Bryson might miss the cut because of how rusty he is. And that's about it. Everyone else up there is going to make the cut. So it's not like I'm fading guys like Cantley, Hovland, and Scheffler expecting them to miss the cut. It's just I don't think they win this golf tournament and potentially maybe don't finish in the top 5. And that's where you're going to need for these guys up top. You're going to need a top 5 finish. And so just keep that in mind. It's all relative. Let's talk about Jon Rahm, though. Absolutely love him. The ball striking's there. He's gaining close to 1.3 shots gained off the tee per round, which is just outstanding. You're not going to find that from any other player in the world. It's going to be particularly useful at this version of the Masters, especially if it plays a little bit softer on Thursday and Friday. It's going to play closer to 76, maybe even 7,700 yards in terms of effective distance. And you can see on bent grass for his career, he gains a ton of strokes putting. And the one thing about the Masters is you're never able to use a greens reading book here. It's something that they took away from Jon Rahm this year, and he's really struggled with the putter. And I've heard a lot of sharp people kind of mention that as a reason why he might be potentially struggling. Now, if that's the case at Augusta National, he's gained strokes here putting, I believe, in 4 of his 5 starts here. He should be able to get back to that. If he can tune back into a positive putter, I mean, on bent grass, he just loves the surface in general here on tour. The sky is the limit for Jon Rahm. I mean, the course history kind of speaks for itself. 5th, 7th, 9th, 4th, 27th. So slowly but surely becoming more consistent here at Augusta. He could very well win this Masters. I have an outright bet on him. He's probably my favorite pick up top, bar none, particularly because he's also not the highest owned option, right? He's 16.6%, which I think is more than fair. I'm going to have in the 35 to 40% range, even for my 150 max stuff. Justin Thomas, I also like, though. So I got to talk about JT. And I tried to find any reason I could to fade him this week. I completely understand with JT that he's going to be popular, right? His course history has been okay. It hasn't really been all that great, particularly when you compare it to some of the other guys up top. I guess outside Colin Morikawa, right? He's got one of the weaker course histories. 21st, 4th in 2020 was nice, but that was also the quote unquote asterisk year. 12th, 17th, 22nd, none of those were good enough for DFS. Not even close to it. The only one where he almost came close was here where he finished 4th place, but because Dustin ran away with it, ended up finishing in 1st place, scoring 1 million DraftKings points, it didn't matter. Justin Thomas was actually doing you a disservice that week. So he hasn't been optimal at this golf course yet. So that's the only argument I could find against him. But in terms of shot making, everything you have to do around Augusta National, he's literally the perfect fit. I mean, he's got Tiger Woods in the back of his mind. And to me, I think that's a huge, huge asset. I mean, he heard kind of Jon Rahm bitching and complaining about it, that only JT is getting dissertations about how to chip off of some of these hanging lies and whatnot. And so be it. That's because Justin Thomas takes the effort to be a part of Tiger Woods' life, and that's going to pay dividends for him. Of course, I think a lot of them, they have a lot of similarities with their personality, both of those players. And there's a reason why they're both two of my top 5 favorite players in the world. So I kind of understand that kind of competitive mindset. They're not going to spread that kind of information. JT was asked a few times some of the things that Tiger had shared with him, and he said, I'm not telling you because I don't want anyone else to know. And that's kind of my MO, right? I'm one of those competitive people. It's like, screw you. No, I'm not telling you. You're trying to beat me. So I like that competitive mindset. I got to play JT, even though he's 20% owned. Just again, the only thing you can hold against him is the course history, and he's gone slightly better over time. He's gone slightly more consistent, right? He started to put up some of those decent finishes over the last 3 years. So it wasn't enough to make him a fade there. So I like him a whole lot. Collin Morikawa is super low owned. He's only 9.8%, which just dropped and dropped and dropped throughout the week. I guess all of the people trying to play JT, there's some people trying to talk themselves into playing Victor Hovland, which so be it, right? I don't think he's got a game that's meant for major championships. Whereas Collin Morikawa, on the other hand, is the major championship print fest. 2 of 8 wins at this point out of 8 starts. Just has the iron play we're looking for. He's maybe not the most creative around the green player, but he's at least good enough. We saw that at Royal St. George's. I mean, that's an extremely hard course to get up and down at. Because of the wind there, you're missing a ton of greens as well. And of course, on Saturday and Sunday, he absolutely lit it up over there in Europe. So I do like him at $10,200, even though the recent form hasn't been all that good. You're going to see a few guys at the Masters that break through that recent form slump. You see it every single year because it is such a unique golf course that rewards specific players and specific types of players. Guys like him can kind of shake that off in a hurry. So I do like them there at $10,200. It's also why I like Rory McIlroy. Same reasoning, right? He's very solid at Augusta National. He has the course fit that we're looking for. He's very creative. He's had success here at Augusta National in the past. So why not there at $10,000, right? The approach play hasn't been good. He got burned by him last week as a core pick, but not somebody that I'm actively looking to get away from. I guess let's talk about Victor Hovland. And this guy, he just doesn't have the game for major championships. It's super clear. When he gets out of position, he has an extremely hard time getting up and down. And on Saturdays and Sundays, his lag putting is among the worst in the entire PGA Tour. The guy has a really hard time getting it inside that 3-foot circle. So $10,100, at easy golf courses where that's not a problem, where greens are running at 11s and 12s, where hitting greens isn't something that is going to be in like the 70-75% range. That's when Victor Hovland is an absolute print fest. He's going to win like most of those events, particularly in weaker field events. And that's where you've seen him have a lot of success. It's in smaller fields, weaker field events, easier golf courses. He's yet to win at a hard golf course. He's yet to even really finish highly at a hard golf course. I mean, look at his major championship record. It's extremely inconsistent. I don't get why people are trying to play Victor Hovland this week. Like, he's gone up in ownership, right? So as Collin Morikawa has gone down over the week, people are starting to play Victor Hovland. And outside of conditions on Thursday, which I think are favorable for Hovland's game, you still got to play the last 3 rounds. Still got to play Friday through Sunday. And of course, that's where he's really kind of exposed himself. With that around the green play, the more pressure on the line, the worse that he's been in that category. And of course, with the 3-putting, I mean, the guy's been shooting himself in the foot with the 3-putts, right? So if he doesn't do that, I get why people are excited, I guess, because if he doesn't shoot himself in the foot, he's such a great player, but that's just his game. We know that that's what he's going to do. That's just his shots gain metrics. That's Victor Hovland. His player profile is very solid ball striker, but you shoot yourself in the foot a lot because you don't work enough on the short game. That's just his reality at this point. And until he cleans that up, I'm never playing him at major championships. It doesn't really matter the venue either. It had to be an extremely easy major championship venue, which you're not going to get. US Open's not going to give that to you. You're not going to get that with the PGA Championship. And of course, the Open Championship is a brute every single year. So, and of course, Augusta National for the Masters isn't going to change. So just unfortunate for him. He's got to figure that out, because if he wants to win some of the biggest tournaments in the world, he's going to have to deal with getting up and down, and particularly in some of these clutch situations. Moving on into this 9K range, actually, I guess we'll catch up on chat down here. If Jordan P says, who have you warmed up to the most as the week has went on, and who have you cooled on? So for me, who have I warmed up on? It would be Rory McIlroy. At the beginning of the week, I was really, really hesitant to play him. A lot of it was the approach play, and I don't want to say that an interview sold me on him, but hearing him say that he was happy he missed the cut at Valero kind of lets me forgive and forget that, right? He's kind of cleared that from his memory bank. He's looking at it as a positive at this point. And I know a lot of times players BS, but Rory McIlroy is one of the most, let's say, straightforward and honest players on tour. The guy will pretty much tell you anything on his mind. So I do just like the course history. He's definitely somebody I've warmed up on. In terms of cooling on players, it would be Dustin Johnson. I really thought I was going to play him this week. I was really sold on just the fact that his game has looked a lot better over the last few weeks. The unfortunate part with Dustin Johnson is, comparatively with the guys around him, he's probably the lowest caliber play out of all of them. And it was really just kind of a reality check for me. You can't play everyone up top. So he's somebody I cooled on a little bit. Early in the week, I thought I was going to have 30-40% of DJ. Just at this point, I'm probably going to have 0% just because I can't play everyone up top. That'd be the most notable guy I've cooled down on for sure. But great question there, Jordan. That is always something that's happening week to week. Of course, as we go through more and more research, more and more data, freaking Masters week, we've gone through so much data at this point. It's hurting my head, as I told you guys. Lots of things change. So yeah, we'll talk. I'll make sure to mention anyone else that I've kind of cooled on or anyone else that I've gone a little bit hotter on through the week as well. Moving on into this 9K range, Cameron Smith's an unfortunate fade. Like I said before, you can't play everyone up top. He's going to be 20% owned. So to get leverage, you're looking at least 35, maybe even 40% ownership, depending on what contest you're in. $9,900. He's expensive. I get it. Again, I think he's a top 10 player in the world, if not a top 5 player in the world. But at this type of golf course, in this type of field, given those type of ownership levels, he's just being steamed a little bit too much for my liking. I understand the play. I think that's why he's so popular. But this is the Masters. You have all these high-quality players in the field. And like I said before, you pretty much need a top 5 finish to pay off. Finishing 9th place here at $9,900 probably isn't going to be enough for these large field contests. So somebody that I'm fading just from a game theory perspective. Now, if you're playing cash, I think he's an excellent play. I think he's almost a lock to finish in the top 20. But like I said before, even a top 10 finish might not be enough. So just more of a game theory thing than anything with Cam Smith. You guys know I absolutely love the guy. He's definitely got the best hairstyle on the PGA Tour, not even close. Pat Perez's flow is pretty decent, but Cameron Smith's on another level there with the mullet. Jordan Spieth there at $9,800. I got talked into him just listening to some of his interviews as well. Of course, at the Valero Texas Open, he led the field in shots gained tee to green. He gained over 7 strokes tee to green on Sunday, which is just outstanding. And he lost over 7 strokes with the putter that week. So completely shot himself in the foot. But Jordan himself said this week that he can be completely putting the ball off of the earth, like losing strokes putting to the field, yada, yada, yada. Every time he comes to Augusta National, he gains strokes putting. And I went and looked at the numbers just to go ahead and confirm this. And when he ended up winning this golf tournament, 2 of the 3 weeks going into that event, he lost strokes putting on the green. So it's not just something that he said during an interview, right? Something that I went there and fact checked, and it sold me on him, right? This is a guy who's a field putter. You can definitely tell that with Jordan Spieth. A lot of times he's putting, he's not even looking at the golf ball. Most famously back in the day, pretty much every putt within 5 feet, he would just look at the hole and hit the putt. And when you can see these greens, whenever they're running the way that Jordan Spieth wants them to run, he's going to make putts and bunches. And again, he's coming off a week where he was absolutely striping it. I'm really excited about Jordan Spieth. I mean, look at this course history too. I mean, just it really speaks for itself. Third, you can see the last 2 years during the slump, not that great of performances, but third, 11th, he has a win. And then he has 2 other top 5 finishes as well in 2016 and 2015. So don't forget that. So it's not just the solid finishes here in 2018 and 2021. He has a win, a couple other top 5 finishes. Like I said, just in terms of course history, there's Tiger Woods, there's Jordan Spieth, and that's about it at this golf course. These are the best players by far in terms of course history. In major championships, I guess you can include Brooks Koepka there. But those guys are certainly plays every single time you get to a major championship. I guess not Tiger Woods this time. We'll talk about it a little bit later. You can see he's not in my player pool, which it's unfortunate. We'll talk about it though. Xander Schauffele though, here at $9,600. I do like him. I think that he's a decent course fit. He finished 3rd place here last year. Choked, of course, towards the last 3 holes there, which is unfortunate for Xander. But I do think he has that kind of upside in him. He's been a contender in major championships almost every single time he tees it up. U.S. Open, he's had plenty of success. PGA Championship, he's had some success. And, of course, here at the Masters with multiple top 5 finishes. Let's see. I was 3rd here, 2nd in 2019. He's made the cut every time he showed up here. So I do like him. I think that 14.7% might be the lowest ownership number we're going to get on him for quite some time because he's a favorite of the industry. People love playing Xander Schauffele. Usually he's like in that 18 to 22% range in terms of ownership. So we're getting a little bit of a discount there, which also makes me like him a little bit more. Patrick Cantley's approach play has been horrendous. We can really do this one quickly. He's losing to the field over his last 24 measured rounds. Other than Bryson DeChambeau and also Louis Oosthuizen down here, who we'll talk about at $8,900. The only players above that price that are losing to the field with their approach play, which of course is an issue. That's the most sticky stat from round to round. Brooks Koepka is probably winning this thing. If Jon Rahm doesn't win, it's going to be Brooks Koepka. Love the recent form. Love the fact that, of course, he's going into this tournament a little bit overlooked. Only 14.7% owned. So very similar to Xander Schauffele there at $9,600. The putting has been a bright spot for Brooks. He started to gain strokes with the putter, which is really what makes him run. You can see gaining nearly 0.2 of a stroke per round. And even though the around the green play, right, he's a loser to the field, that has never hurt him at the major championships in the past. He's been able to kind of elevate his game in that category. I mean, the U.S. Opens, right, some of the hardest conditions to get up and down in the world, he's been able to do so. And he's also had success at Augusta National. So put this miscut aside. If you guys didn't see the Core Picks video, this is when he was severely injured. It was one of his first events back from injury, so you kind of get to give him a pass there. But look, 7th, 2nd, 11th place finish, right? That's really solid track record, exactly what we're looking for there. Moving down a little bit further, I'll actually catch up on chat, see if there's any questions down here. Looks like there is. Jordan P says, I picked Rory last week too, but also glad he missed the cut. He'd be a ton of ownership. Absolutely true. Driving the ball unbelievably and at distance should help, particularly with some of the wet conditions we'll have for Thursday and Friday. Completely agree. And yeah, he would be like 25% owned if he went off last week. So perhaps it was a good thing in hindsight. If he ends up coming through for us this week, Jordan, I completely agree with you there. Moving down to this bottom of the 9K range, Hideki at $9,300. He's dealing with an injury. Don't think it's worth pursuing there. $9,100 Bryson, also dealing with the injury concerns, also extremely rusty. Probably not worth it taking a look at here. And you can see they're super low owned, but not low owned enough to really entice me there. Just not really solid enough plays. Will Zalatoris, I got to see if I can fit him in my player pool. I don't think he's going to fit in there, though, because you can see he's at 13.1%. And frankly, I'm nowhere near as sold on him as the rest of the industry. Literally, everyone's talking about Will Zalatoris. Guys, he's played the Masters one time. I know he finished in 2nd place. That's a 1 tournament sample size. Do we really think that this guy is just like the second coming of Tiger Woods, second coming of Phil Mickelson, Jordan Spieth, or whatever, and he's just going to come out here every single year, finish in the top 5, that kind of thing? I highly doubt that, okay? And that's what people are talking about him this week about. Like, oh, he's just going to gain strokes on the greens here putting at Augusta because he did last year. Well, guess what? He gained strokes putting here at Augusta last year and lost strokes putting in the next, like, 8 events. Because I played him, like, every week in DFS, and he missed, like, 4 of those 8 cuts. Sure, he had, like, 1 good performance, right? But are we just expecting that to come back next year? For Jordan Spieth, the reason why I'm counting on that is he's done that, like, every single year he showed up here, and he's obviously been here for at least 6 years at this point, whereas Will Zalatoris is on a 1-year sample size. So there's a difference in touting Jordan Spieth's putting at Augusta than there is touting Will Zalatoris' putting here at Augusta. Now, if he goes out there and he gains 5 strokes putting this week to the field, maybe next year you can use that as a narrative, right? Maybe we can actually talk about Will Zalatoris' putting here at Augusta National. But to say that after a 1-year sample size is speculation at best. It's you just taking a gamble that is something that's going to repeat year after year. That's not an established trend. That's not how trend analysis works. You don't take a one data point sample size and try to make any type of assertions from it. So 1 data point sample size. There's a reason why you don't do that, right? It's like data 101. Let's move here to the 8K range now. We have Daniel Berger at $9,000. He has a horrible course history here. He's kind of like my sleeper pick of the week to come through out of nowhere. In terms of course fit, he should be decent here, right? He's got the up and down game we're looking for. He gains in all 4 major statistical categories. So very similar to Xander Schauffele, who's also had success here at Augusta National. Just, of course, you're getting lower ownership here. He's only 10% because of this course history, which really isn't all that bad, right? He missed the cut here last time out. He didn't play after that injury spell, wasn't qualified for the event. 32nd, 27th. So, it's not like he was an amazing player in 2018, 2017. He was still kind of getting his stuff together. He wasn't gaining across all 4 categories, wasn't nearly as complete of a player as he is now. And just because he missed the cut last year, everyone just thinks he's horrible at Augusta National. So much like Will Zalatoris, you got to give the guy a little bit of a sample size, right? Particularly now that he's a completely different player here in 2021, 2022 than he was back in the day. So somebody that I'm willing to buy back in on, I definitely think he could turn it around. Louis Oosthuizen, he's playing with Tiger Woods, which would concern me with some players. I'm more concerned about the approach play. So like I said before, it's only Patrick Cantley, Brayson, and then Louis Oosthuizen who are losing to the field with their approach play. But look at these other shots gain categories. He's gaining nearly half a stroke per round off the tee. That's more than Patrick Cantley. He's gaining nearly a third of a stroke per round around the green. That's really solid for Louis. And of course, still gaining with the putter. And last year, he was number 1 on tour in shots gained putting. So we could very well see a ton of regression there with the putter towards the positive. So I do like him at $8,900. If you're going to try and buy back in on anybody coming in with really scratchy form, I'd rather do so with a guy that's not $10,000, right? I'd rather make sure that they're not going to cost me an arm and a leg here, and also an arm and a leg in terms of ownership, right? He's only 8.9% owned. So when you're taking chances on players that might be coming in with shaky form or with huge question marks behind them, right? You just have to make sure that the price is right and also the ownership is right. So that's why I'm willing to go to somebody like a Louis. Shane Lowry is incredibly popular, but I think that's only really among Twitter, kind of like our bubble that we've created here in the golf DFS sphere. So he's only 9.9% projected owned, which is a lot lower than you would expect with how many people you see talking him up this week. So I'm willing to go there at 8.8K. Of course, the approach play is what we're looking for. He won the Open Championship, which in terms of a skill set, I would comp the Open Championship very much so to what we have to do here at Augusta National and the Masters, especially if the wind's going to be nasty, right? If we're going to have wind similar to Thursday and Friday on Saturday and Sunday, which at this point it is way too early to tell on that, he would be an even better play. So of course, we don't know the outcome of that. We're not going to know what the weather's going to look like this weekend. So if you think that's in the cards, perhaps go to Shane Lowry there, $8,800. Taylor Gooch, he's only 3.5% owned, and that's 100% because of the price. He's very likely to make it into my player pool. So I have him down as a blank right now. Of course, if you guys are new here, the way this works is anyone down as a yes, I'm 100% playing this week in my 150 max. Anyone down as a no, I'm 100% fading this week. So I'm going to have 0% of all the guys down as a no. The cores, yeses, and values and all that, that'll also just count as a yes. Whereas the guys that are down as a blank are a little bit undecided. Now, they're guys that might fit into my 150 max if I can go ahead and fit them in there. Or they're guys that I just don't know what the hell to do with yet. For Taylor Gooch, is one of the guys I'm going to probably try and fit in because to get leverage on him, I only have to play about 8% in all of my lineups. So an 8.7K, because he's super low owned, more than likely to fit into my player pool. Whereas guys like DJ, right, I have him down as a blank. I'd love to fit him into the player pool, but he's also $10,500. He's also 12.6% owned, which means I got to play like 25, 30% of them to fit him into the pool, and that's probably not going to happen. So just understand with some of the blanks, it's I know it's not the most descriptive thing. It's a little bit by situation, but that's the best way I can categorize it. Right, just guys that are all right. I don't really know what to do with them. Moving on to Sam Burns, he's just way higher owned than I expected. I thought he was going to be similarly owned to a Taylor Gooch. I guess just people like the price tag at $8,600. They think it's affordable and whatnot. And of course, I'm also fading Tiger Woods. Let's go ahead and start off with Sam Burns here. The issue is the around the green play. He's not the most complete player. He's very much so a bomb and gouge type of guy who's going to get a ton of strokes gained off the tee, a ton of strokes gained with his putter when he has it rolling. And at Augusta National, that can get you by for a round or two, kind of like a Victor Hovland type of build, right? I think they're pretty similar players. Sam Burns a little bit of a better putter than Victor Hovland, whereas Hovland's maybe a little bit better with the approach play. Nonetheless, at $8,600, he shouldn't be 15% owned. I was hoping he'd be like 7 or 8%, where I'd be willing to get 15, maybe 20% of them in my player pool. But to play 30, 35% of Sam Burns, which is pretty much what you have to do here at 14.2%, at least to get significant leverage to the field, it's just something that I'm not personally comfortable doing. So he's not going to be in my player pool. I guess let's talk about Tiger. And oh boy, guys, I think he's going to finish in the top 20. Don't get me wrong here. But for these guys in the 8K range, because I'm playing in the super big GPP, the $5 100K to first, I believe there's 196,000 entries. I can't play Tiger Woods, right? A 12th place finish is nowhere near enough for that type of contest. You're pretty much going to have 6, maybe even of the top 7 or 8 players in the leaderboard. Just I don't see him finishing in the top 10. I think it'd be the greatest story, maybe sporting history, if he went out there and finished in the top 5 this week. I see him finishing like 15th or 16th place. That's going to be my take on Tiger Woods. And for DFS, that just isn't enough. So that's why I'm fading him there. Completely understand if you're playing Tiger Woods just because he's Tiger Woods. But understand I'm playing a lot of money when I'm playing DFS, right? I'm putting a lot of money behind these takes. It's not just like me playing 4 to 5 lineups. I'm not playing it recreationally. I'm playing it professionally. I have to take a different approach on these guys than some of you guys out there, right? If you're just playing this for fun, if you're doing it for entertainment, by all means, play Tiger Woods. Completely understand that. But if you're wanting like my analytical take, just from a pure EV standpoint, playing Tiger Woods is not a good idea because 11.8%, this might be half of what he comes in at. He might be 25% owned in some of these contests. In the Millie Maker, I guarantee you he's at least 15% owned, if not 20% owned in that contest. And in the $5 GPP I'm in, probably 15 to 20% as well. So just understand that contest selection is going to change this drastically. And in some of these larger field, I shouldn't say large field, sorry, opposite of that, in some of these higher dollar GPPs where it's like a single entry, that type of thing, you know, $100, the $200 single entry, he's going to be like 3 or 4% owned. That's just going to tell you the sentiment on him, right? All the sharp players aren't going to be willing to play him, whereas a lot of the casuals that are just playing DFS for fun, they're going to gravitate to Tiger Woods. So just understand that I don't hate the guy. Of course, I hope he has a great week. I already have, like I said, bets on him to finish top 20, make the cut. I had a bet on him just to play this week that I set 3 months ago. I bet him just to play the Masters. I got it at plus 250. So I knew he was going to play, you know, something that I've been talking about for a while here. I've said it here on the channel multiple times. Just wait until he ends up talking about coming out to the Masters. But yeah, I can't play him in DFS. That's just spiel on Tiger. I just have to say that there. Looks like we have a few other comments down in chat. Derek says, straight fire analysis as always, Luke. I appreciate you, Derek. Thank you for stopping by. If you guys have any questions, of course, make sure to go ahead and throw them down in chat. Just like what Chris Palmer has here, where he has a cash head-to-head. He has JT, Cam Smith, Adam Scott, Billy Horschel, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Mac Hughes. Or the other lineup he's considering is starting a little bit lower down the board, which I actually do like for cash. Let's go ahead and check out the players. It is Cam Smith, Xander Schauffele, Adam Scott, Russell Henley, Matt Fitzpatrick, and then with $6,700 left. So I would take the second of the two combinations there. And at $6,700, let me do a little bit of a look ahead. I'd be taking Tom Hoge. I do really like Tom Hoge, especially for cash because of his approach play. In GPPs, I like guys like Cameron Champ a little bit more because of his top end upside, maybe even Harold Varner III, but that'd be Tom Hoge for me. So and yeah, I would go with the second of those two combinations. So I don't know if you wanted my take on that. Just because you're starting a little bit lower, of course, you're taking guys that are in that 7K range. Mac Hughes might be a little bit risky. I'd go with the second combination. But yeah, let's continue with the player pool here in this middle of the 8K range. Sanjay M finished second place here. He has some decent finishes, just really shaky recent form. So that's why he's 7.2% owned. But like I said before, you're going to see some guys shake off the rust, have some success at the Masters that you maybe didn't expect before. And he's definitely my pick to do that this year. Adam Scott at $8,300. Wouldn't be surprised to anybody if he had success here at the Masters. The guy's a winner. He has a ton of success at Augusta National over the years. And the recent form has been extremely favorable for him. If you take a look at it, gaining in every category but around the green, which is kind of his thing, but gaining significantly with the putter over half a stroke per round. The approach play has been pretty decent. And over the last 50 measured rounds, it's almost identical, which if you're trying to look at a guy, you know, who's trending upwards, I think the last 24 measured rounds are a really good way to, you know, use a barometer. But if you want to see how consistent a player is, make sure that shots gain profile is consistent over the last 50 measured rounds as well, right? Now, if you're talking about a 6K option, that's not going to be the case, right? There's a reason why they're priced in the 6K range. For these guys that are in the 8K or 9K or even 10K range, you want to see that consistency over the last 24 and the last 50 measured rounds. So that is the reason why I have both of those tabs up here. Of course, one's shorter term, one's a little bit longer term. And for Adam Scott, that's exactly what we get. Gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, still gaining close to half a stroke per round with the putter. So I love what I'm seeing from Adam Scott. And even though it doesn't look pretty at times, he's at least a damn consistent player at this point. So I do like him there, $8,300, particularly in cash. So Chris Palmer, I know you had him in both of those lineups. I absolutely love it with Adam Scott. I think he's the perfect cash lineup play. Joaquin Niemann, I will be playing at $8,200. He's also in the Tiger Woods group, so you're going to see a ton of shots from Joaquin Niemann this week. I just think that he has the approach play and also the around the replay we're looking for. He's vastly improved in that category. You can see over his last 24 measured rounds, he's still not great, but he's a gainer to the field now. If you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, you know, it's kind of the opposite for Joaquin Niemann. You can see it starts to kind of go back towards neutral, right? Only right a quarter of a stroke gain per round. But it's exciting to see that he's figured it out because that was really what was holding him back. He's always been an insanely good ball striker. He's always been very inconsistent with the putter. When he can gain in bunches, though, like he did at Riviera, he's going to go out there and absolutely storm the field. So love him there, $8,200. I think he's a high upside play, but also a low floor play. So he could definitely miss the cut here. So we're starting to get into the range now. I know before I said like everyone's going to make the cut. That's $9,000 plus, maybe except for Bryson, maybe except for Hideki. Now we're going to have guys that might legitimately miss the cut at this range. Joaquin Niemann, he definitely has a floor low enough to miss the cut, but I also love his upside, especially for some of these larger field tournaments. Love the consistency of a Terrell Hatton, just a 12.4%. I think that's more than fair. Has the type of game that we're looking for in these major championships, extremely well-rounded. Now getting into the 7K range, there's going to be some chalk that we're fading, and there shouldn't be chalk in the 7K range of the Masters. Let me go ahead and explain this. So a lot of times when we're playing DFS, right, we're just at normal tour events, specifically easier courses, right, where we have like Scoring Fest getting the 15 to 20 under par. You're going to have guys in the 7K range, especially in weaker fields, that are just slam dunk plays that make so much more sense than everyone else in the field that they deserve to be 15 to 20% owned. I'm willing to eat that type of chalk. Not the Masters, where literally every player in this range is almost identical in terms of pedigree. Sure, a lot of the quote-unquote chalky guys that are coming in with good recent form, but this tournament has proven over the years that course history is way more important than recent form. So if you're going to tell me that Russell Henley is going to be nearly 20% owned, fade, not even thinking about it. It's not even something I have to look into the numbers for. If you're going to tell me Tommy Fleetwood is going to be half as owned as somebody like a Corey Connors, it is the easiest pivot I'll make in human history. If you're going to tell me that guys down here like Siwoo Kim are going to be 15% owned, whereas guys like Robert McIntyre, even Gary Woodland, are going to be a third owned, are you kidding me? Like, it's just some of the easiest decisions to be made. So I'm just fading all the chalk in this range. It's super straightforward. This is a golf tournament where a lot of the cream rises to the top, and everyone in this range is the quote-unquote cream. Right? These could easily be $9,000 golfers in almost any other weak field that we have, which means that I'm not going to be playing guys that are 20% owned to this range. It's just very straightforward to me. Again, I'm playing in the large field GPP, 196,000 entries. So I'm trying to beat a ton of people to try and take down $100,000. And I can tell you, playing chalky 7K option, guys, is not going to do that for you this week. Even if they end up finishing in the top 15, right, you're going to have to get the guys in the 7K range, right, that finish in the top 5. You're going to need a top 5 finish. So I'd much rather scattershot in other players. By fading these chalky players, I can play almost everyone else in this range. Right? I'm still going to be able to fit Sergio into my lineups. I'm still going to be able to fit guys like Bubba Watson in here that have elite course history. Seamus Power, who also is coming in with really good, sneaky recent form. He was insanely good at the match play. The guy was a steamroller out there before he ended up losing. And I would much rather handle it that way. So I don't even want to talk about the fades. I'm just going to tell you that I'm fading them almost completely because of ownership. First off, Corey Connors just hasn't had that much success at major championships, so that's the main issue there. Russell Henley is a complete head case. If he can't close out Waialae over there for the Sony Open, he's sure shit not closing out a major championship. And Siwoo Kim, he has a very volatile course history, right? He's played here a bunch, which of course he's a super young player, but he has all that experience because he won the Players Championship so young. But his best finish was last year, and it was a 12th. And like I said, 12th place might not be enough for these large field GPPs. You're going to have those guys that finish in the top 5, top 10 at the very least. And that would be in the only chance he was even close to being optimal. So again, just the chalk is something that you can pretty much almost blindly fade this week here at the Masters, because you can't tell me that any of those guys are even remotely close to being locks this week. And the only one I'm playing, you can see, is Matt Fitzpatrick, just because he was a core pick for me at the beginning of the week, right? I don't want to completely just pivot off of him. Because if anybody has a really good track record here, at least in the 7K range, it is Matt Fitzpatrick. He's made his cut literally every time he showed up here. He's always been a consistent player in major championships. He has the type of game we're looking for, most specifically because of his shots gain profile, where he gains across the board. He gains in all 4 major statistical categories, which there's not many people in this range you can say that about. In fact, there might not be anyone else in this range you can say that about. Let me go ahead and confirm that. Yeah, there's no one else in the range you can say that about. Except for Cameron Young, actually. That's surprising. Cameron Young would be the other man in this range you can say he's gaining across all 4 major statistical categories. Of course, gaining a little bit more significantly in every category here for Matt Fitzpatrick. So just has the game we're looking for in this range. And he's the only one I can even remotely justify using his chalk in this range, because he actually is a good course fit. Whereas guys like Russell Henley, I mean, if you take a look at his shot gain profile, it's because of the approach play that everyone wants to play him, right? He's gaining nearly a stroke gain per round. But what about the off the tee play? Off the tee is extremely important at Augusta National. He's losing to the field, so he definitely has holes in his game. And the putting has been nowhere near as good as it typically is for Russell Henley. So there still are things going wrong for him there. I guess we'll do another chalk report here. Let's talk about Corey Connors. Of course, he also, like Jordan Spieth, had a very solid end to the round there at the Valero Texas Open. But must we forget days 1 through 3? right? My days 1 through 3 looked horrible for Corey Connors, particularly days 2 and 3 there at the Valero. He's a neutral player around the green, neutral player with the putter. So those slightly concern me. And for Siwoo, just take a look at his shots gain profile. You see, he's losing with the approach play. He's losing with the putter. I should tell you everything you need to. Of course, I like the fact that he's gaining off the tee. But my top 2 key stats here at Augusta National are approach play and the putting. So that's concerning to me. Let's talk about some of the guys I'll be taking shots on, though. So first and foremost, we already talked about Fitzpatrick. I like Tommy Fleetwood is coming with sneaky good recent form, especially during the Florida stretch. Was really playing some of his best golf. And we take a look at the course history. It's been a little bit volatile, right? He missed the cut back here in 2017, but 17th, 19th, 36, 46. So he hasn't come through with that flashy performance. But his lead made his last 4 straight cuts. So there's that going for him there. Moving down to the next guy I'm taking a shot on would be Justin Rose. This guy was first round leader. Of course, always has success here at Augusta National. On bent grass greens, he's one of the best putters here in the field, particularly if you take a look at the last 2 years of data. The numbers for Justin Rose on bent grass get even better. And if you take a look at the last 24 measured rounds, they aren't all that favorable for Justin Rose because he's gaining off the tee, at least he's gaining with the putter at least, but he's got to turn that approach play around. So he's certainly not a lock by any means, but here's the thing with Justin Rose, right? He's 10.2% owned. He's not half as likely to succeed as Corey Connors. It's a very simple math equation there. It's a very simple math problem for deciding who to play. And in Paul Casey, by the way, is a little bit injured. We haven't heard that much from him this week. But from what I can tell, especially from what I've heard from people that got reports from the practice rounds, is that he didn't look like he was doing all that much. You know, he was out there kind of on the practice range. Didn't look like he was playing all that many holes. So I am slightly worried about Paul Casey. He, of course, had to withdraw from all those matches at the WGC. So that was the biggest reason to be concerned about him there. Talking about Webb and Billy Ho, love both of them. I talked about them extensively during the value picks video. I think both of them are fairly priced. I think both of them have the type of skill set we're looking for in terms of an all-around game. You know, both of them most of the time are gaining across all 4 major statistical categories. Billy Ho's gotten a lot better off the tee. He's started to gain more significantly off the tee over the last month or so, close to half a stroke gained per round. Now, Webb, of course, he's coming back from injury, so it's going to be a little bit of a long time coming for him off the tee, but solid to see that he's gaining in the other 3 major categories. And at the Valspar Championship, almost said Valero there, he had a really good second round. So definitely a lot of things looking up for Webb Simpson. Also has some really good course history. Of course, for Webb, 12th, 10th, 5th, 20th. He's cut back there in 2017, but has been improving over time. I can't play Patrick Reed with the recent form. Look at this. He's number 79 out of 91 in the field in terms of recent form. Enough said. Just probably no worse player in the field over that stretch. Mark Leishman at $7,300. I like how creative he is. He's been successful at Augusta National in the past. I think he's fairly priced at $7,300, and I think he could be a little bit of a sleeper pick. So somebody I'm willing to go to. He's also relatively low owned, only 8.6% there. Jason Kokrak at $7,200. He's been great at the comp courses I'm looking at. So Shadow Creek, he has a win at. He also has a win at Memorial Park there at the Houston, Texas Open. So 2 comp courses that I used for this week. And in general, I don't believe his course history is all that good here. Yeah, it's not, right? He only has 2 starts, 49th and a missed cut. But because of those comp courses, I'm much more liable to play him this week at 6.1% ownership than the rest of the field. He's definitely somebody I'm willing to take a shot on because of those comp courses. At $7,100, Max Homa is my sleeper pick to win this week. Somebody actually fired an outright bet on there. I think his skill set is sneaky good for this golf course. I mean, think about it. He won Riviera. He's competed there when he hasn't won before. He's a very solid player with the approach play. We know that. Just look at these numbers. They're absolutely beautiful. I mean, you're not going to find a shots gain metric like this in this range for many people. Gaining over half a stroke gain per round off the tee, gaining over 3/4 of a stroke gain per round on approach, gaining with the putter. So why isn't he chalk? Why isn't he like 30% owned or 25% owned like some of these other guys? He's only 13% owned. So I'd much rather go to somebody like Homa in that type of circumstance. We already talked about Siwoo. I think Cameron Young is going to be much more popular than he should be. I get it. He's been playing well, but a lot of those were at weaker field events, also at easier golf courses. I'd like to see it from Cameron Young at a major championship before I go ahead and play him blindly as a relatively high-owned player. Luke List will probably squeeze into my player pool. I like the ball striking. I also like the fact that he's from Augusta, Georgia. Now, I don't think he's played this golf course ever, but outside of playing it early in his career. I believe he top 5 finished way back in the day. But yeah, I like the fact that he's relatively local. He'll be sleeping in his own bed at night. He's going to have a lot of support out there, and he's a really good ball striker more than anything. Robert McIntyre, he's going to break out a major championship at some point, and I want to be there for it because in terms of pedigree, he is heads and shoulders better than the guys around him, especially in terms of world ranking. So if you're just buying in on pure talent level, I think that Robert McIntyre is worth a few looks at 5.6%. And outside of round 4 at the Valero Texas Open, he was otherworldly. He was in contention after 3 rounds. In fact, the reason I know that is I played him on round 4 showdown, and he played like complete shit. Down here at $6,900, we have Gary Woodland. Of course, he's only 4.6% owned somehow, which is ridiculous. He's coming in off a solid week at Valero. Now, he didn't win, but he finished in the top 10. A few other top 10 finishes as well with the recent form. So we'll go ahead and highlight that here. You'll see with Woodland over here at Valero was 8th, 21st at the Valspar, 5th at API, 5th at Honda. So the recent form has been there, and the shots gained metrics are also favorable for him because he's gaining nearly half a stroke gain per round on approach, nearly half a stroke gain per round on putting as well. Just really sustainable type of stuff that I'm looking at there. So I think he should be closer to 15 to 20%, right? Like if you're looking at pure shots gain metrics in recent form, he should be one of those 15 to 20% guys, and he's not. So I'm going to go ahead and play him because he's only at 4.6%. We're not dealing with the same type of ownership level at all. Brian Harman, probably going to squeeze into my pool as well, but Kevin Kisner was the priority here just because of the recent form. Of course, looked really good at the match play at the Players' Championship. $6,800 is more than fair. He's creative enough to get up and down. In an Austin Country Club now, the reason why I don't use it as a comp is you don't have shots gained metrics, right? You're going to have some that are given out by Tour, but they're wonky because not everyone's playing every single hole and that type of stuff. But Kevin Kisner absolutely dissected that place. He was using slopes all over the place. A lot of the par 3s, you have kind of side slopes going into them, and he was hitting them on those side slopes all day, hitting them to 2-3 feet. That is exactly how you play Augusta National. It's that same type of skill set. So if he has that feel factor, that creativity to him, I love that, right? And we haven't really seen that in his finishes here over the years. Kisner, unfortunately, hasn't really came through for us. Missed cut, 21st, 28th, 43rd. So that's why he's coming in with relatively low ownership. That's why he's only at 5.2%, but should be good at this golf course, right? He's accurate off the tee. He's able to get up and down. This golf course isn't that long where he's going to be out of play. So I do like him there at $6,800. Also like Kevin Na for very similar reasons. Very solid all-around player. Very good at getting up and down, and looked really good at the match play. So a very similar reasoning there between those two players. Zane Hoot looked horrible at the match play, but now finally, Zane Hoot is being treated like the player that he should be. $6,700 is not $7,900 now. Like, it was completely overpriced for all of those events where he was going out there and finishing like 50th place, 40th place, missing the cut in a few times. We faded him every single time because it was just ridiculous the price he was at. And he was 20% owned at all those events. Now he's fairly priced at $6,700. Now he's only 6.1% owned. So we're hopping back in on him. Right? He's not that bad of a player. I was just giving him shit because he was being priced along the elite tier in the field, and he's nowhere near that type of player. But compared to his peers down here, he's the best of the batch, right? He's the best of all the shitters down low. Let's go ahead and say that. Eric Van Rooyen at $6,700. Probably going to be in my player pool, right? He's only 3.6% owned, so he's probably squeezing in at the end of the day. Not going to recent champion JJ Spawn. I think that's just a little bit of box score watching. I think a lot of the casuals will play JJ Spawn because they see the win last time out. So I won't be there. Tom Hoagie, I know mentioned him before. He will certainly be in the player pool, so go ahead and just put the yes in there now. Approach play has just been otherworldly over the last 24 measured rounds, and that includes a really rough stretch where he missed a few cuts, didn't look his best self at all. He's still gaining nearly half a stroke gain per round in that category, still gaining over a third of a stroke per round with the off the tee play. And the, of course, around the green and putting, which has kind of cost him, is only around a neutral now. So he hasn't been all that bad, even though he's put up some pretty shaky performances of late. So I'll definitely be going there. I think he's a safe play down low. Cameron Champ at $6,600. He's been good at this golf course. He's made cut both times, which is kind of surprising to me. And I think there's something to be said about that, because when he was coming into this event, it was in dog shit form. It was like he was coming in missing like 6 of 7 cuts. Almost every time he's come into the Masters, he's been one of the worst players when it comes to recent form rank. He's number 83 in the field, so that is no difference this year. But he still came through and made the cut. And this is such a high upside player. I mean, Cameron Champ, when he has his best stuff, he's unbeatable. And I mean that in every sense of the word. You need like Roy McIlroy going out there and winning by 5 strokes version. You need Tiger Woods winning by 5 strokes version to compete with Cameron Champ when he's in that same type of flow. It's almost unexplainable. It's very annoying when you're not on Cameron Champ and that happens, because he's capable of winning by 5-6 strokes for sure. I'm playing him in DFS here because I think there's something there. I think he likes this golf course. I think it suits his eye for whatever reason. And he could very well miss the cut this week, right? He's one of the worst players when it comes to the metrics. But I'm going to be playing him probably his entire career here at the Masters. And it would not surprise me if he's a Master champion at the end of his career. That's like a huge hot take, right? No one else is saying that. I can guarantee you that. But I do think that at one point in his career, especially if we see something this week, then I'll double down on that. I'll say that even more so next year, because so far it's been pretty decent for Cameron Champ, and he's impressed me there. And he's definitely getting better as well. He's improving as a player year after year. I think that he has a lot more potential than people are giving him credit for. HV3 looked pretty decent over there at Saudi. He's had some decent performances of late, but in general, he's a well-rounded player. He gains in most shots gained categories. Over his last 24 measure rounds, hasn't been nearly as sharp. The off-the-tee play is not there. The putting is not there. But when Harold Varner III is playing in his best version of golf, which we'll go ahead and show you what that looks like down here, he's very good in all 4 statistical categories, right? He starts the game with the putter again. The off-the-tee play is still a lot loser over those last 50 measured rounds, but more significant gainer on approach, more significant gainer around the green. Just a much higher caliber player than a lot of his peers down here. Thomas Peters at $6,600. He finished 4th here in 2017, so perhaps those are breadcrumbs of things to come there at $6,600. Very high pedigree player, underrated when it comes to his world golf ranking. Ryan Palmer looked decent last week at Valero until he fell apart on the weekend. Perhaps he can channel some of those vibes from Thursday and Friday, put something up this week, wouldn't put it past him. Same thing with Lucas Glover. He has some experience here around this track, so I like him there at $6,400. Just decent skill set for the golf course as well. He's very solid with the approach play, pretty decent around the green player. Just has to find a few putts dropping, but he's only $6,400, right? So if we have top 10 finish for Lucas Glover would be more than enough for us. Top 15 might even be enough. Stewart Sink, he used to be amazing around this track. So back in the day at Augusta National, before, of course, he lost eligibility to play here, he was finishing top 5 a bunch. He had a 3rd place finish, a bunch of made cuts in a row. And last year, I believe, finished in the top 15. Just to get an exact number on that. Stewart Sink. Yeah, he finished 12th place last year. So lot going for Stewart Sink at this golf course. It makes sense. He's such good around the green player. He's such a creative player, and very good off the tee as well. He's gotten better off the tee as he's gotten older too. Garrett Cago at $6,300. If you're looking for a high upside play, he's always somebody I'm willing to go to. Very similar bucket to Cameron Champ. And for him to have won in his first ever event, maybe that was the most lucky thing he could have ever had happen to him, because now he gets to play in like any tournament he wants to for the next 3 years. And now he has more chances to go out there and have that type of performance. But he's that same type of spike player. Mackenzie Hughes at $6,300. He's super cheap, but really volatile as well. Of course, he's been good at these major championships, but he's also been pretty dreadful at a few. Charles Wurzel, past champion at the Masters, also finished 3rd place here another year. So, of course, this place, for whatever reason, tends to fit his eye. So even though he's coming in with some dreadful recent form, you got to hunker down on a reason to play some of these guys down low. And the course history is what I'm doing there for Charles. He's only 0.5% owned. So I'm probably going to have him in like 5% of lineups at a max. And the last guy I have down as a yes is going to be Gsluke. $6,200. I like the approach play. He's a first timer at this event, so no course history to speak of. But he's only 1.4% owned. So probably going to have him in like 4, maybe 5% of my lineups this week. I just like the skill set fit. And of course, $6,200, you're not going to beat that price tag. So like that there. Maybe have a few lineups with Padraig Harrington, and might have a few lineups with Takumi Kanaya as well, because he's only $6,000. In terms of pedigree, he should be priced closer to like $6,400. World ranking points matter, especially when you're trying to evaluate some of these newer players on the PGA Tour. So maybe getting a little bit early on Takumi Kanaya when he has his first ever top 15 in a major might end up paying off this week. He's only 0.3% owned, right? So put him in like 1 or 2 of your 150 lineups. Got a little bit of leverage there in case he goes off. So that's the guy at the bottom of the board I'm taking a look at. We'll go ahead and catch him on chat. Looks like there's quite a few guys down here that we'll have to touch on. Chris Palmer says, I really like that first lineup. Yeah, man, then go ahead and enter the first one. It doesn't matter to me, but You got to be willing to eat Mackenzie Hughes then, right? So that's the issue there with the first one, Chris. If you really like Mackenzie Hughes, then I definitely think it's worth going to because, of course, you got JT. I absolutely love JT this week. Anthony Lopez says, thoughts on Brooks winning? I've been having a feeling about him all week. I think he's hungry. I think me and you are having a very similar feeling. He was the first bet that I placed. I think he's winning this week, or John Rahm's winning. Like, almost undoubtedly one of those two are going to win. I have a very strong feeling about that. Or Max Homa from completely out of right field. One of those guys is going to win. But Anthony, I completely agree with you there. Jordan says, is Neiman going to play worse when he's paired with the GOAT? He could, but a lot of times guys don't. It's usually the group ahead that gets impacted a little bit more, which you would think it's the guys that he's playing with that are going to be impacted. But usually the fans are respectful enough to kind of hold in place until the other guys hit before they move up to the green. Whereas with the group ahead, there's going to be guys that are just sprinting to get onto the next hole, to get onto that first set of the ropes. And you've heard over the years that the group ahead of Tiger is the ones that hate it, the ones that are like, oh my God, like, why is this happening to us? So I'm actually a little bit worried about those guys, Jordan. Yi Win says, Hadden for all the money. I definitely like him in DFS this week. Not sure if I could put an outright bet on him, but I definitely like him there for DFS. Spencer says, is Cam going to be impacted by playing in the group before Tiger? Hit it on the nail right there. I'm not playing Cam Smith, and it's part of the reason I'm not playing him. That's the real impact. And Spencer, you hit the nail on the head right there. Yeah, it's the group ahead that has the main issue. So it's a little bit of a nuanced thing with Tiger Woods. Again, you would expect that to be the group that's actually playing with him that's bothered, but it's usually the group that's ahead. And sometimes the group that's behind Tiger also deals with issues because you have this massive group of people in front of you, right? And some of them, we're waiting on the fairway way back because if you want to get a first line view, if you want to be in like the first 5 people able to watch from the side, you're going to have to go way back on the fairway. So you still have a lot of that residual noise. So Spencer, yeah, I completely agree. I do think the guys in the group do have some issues there. And Catch Me If You Can says, I currently have my hands in the $1 million lineup. Man, you got to share it with me, dude. You got to send me there on Twitter. You got to let me know what that is. Just kidding. Hopefully you go out there and win the $1 million this week. That'd be awesome, dude. And Ron says Sink or Peters. That'd be Sink for me if you're looking for safety. If you're looking for upside, I'd go to Thomas Peters. So if you're in cash, Sink's the play. If you're in a large field GPP, maybe go to Thomas Peters there, Ron. Alrighty, let's talk about some strategy. So before, I know I mentioned the waves. We talked about a little bit about weather. I'm going to go ahead and reiterate that right now just for anybody who's hopping in a little bit late. There is going to be nasty weather on Thursday and Friday. There is going to be slightly less wind for Friday morning. So if you're going to be looking at any type of a quote unquote PM AM split, it would be the PM AM wave that would be advantageous, but there are no waves this week, right? It's continuous tee times from morning until afternoon when they finish. And you're also dealing with, first off, all the best players playing in the PM anyways, the quote unquote PM AM wave. So just not really much that you can act on in terms of that, in terms of strategy. But in terms of the strategy that I'm going with this week, if you're playing in these large field tournaments, of course, we're going to be using ownership pivots. Just leave $200 salary on the table. Really going to be that easy. Now, I know it's going to be guys that you want to spend up for. It's going to be a little bit harder to leave salary on table this week than most weeks. If you leave $200 of salary on the table, you're going to be like 98% there unique right off the bat. Let alone if you're fading some of those chalky plays, you're almost going to assure yourself you're going to be unique this week. So for me, I'm putting a cap in my optimizer at $49,800. It's going to be that simple. The fact that I'm not playing guys like Cameron Smith, I'm not playing some of these chalky guys like Sam Burns, Tiger Woods, right? He's going to be really chalky. Russell Henley, Corey Connors. I can just pretty much build at will. I'm not going to have to go through every single lineup and make sure I'm not taking all of the chalk because it's pretty much going to be done for me. So that's going to be just the main general strategy talk. Let's go ahead and hop over to DraftKings and now actually go and make some lineups. Give you guys an idea of some of the ways that I'll be building for this week. Ooh, I actually got to bring up DraftKings. Give me a second. I meant to do that before. I had a little brain fart. Apologize, guys. I'll catch up on chat while I bring this up as well. Looks like we have a few comments down here. Jordan P says, great analysis. Keep it up. Let's all get paid. Appreciate you stopping by, Jordan. Thank you for stopping by. Neil says, Luke the GOAT. Neil, you're the GOAT. Appreciate you stopping by. And Chris Palmer says, do you like Glover or over Mackenzie Hughes in that cash lineup I mentioned before? Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one, dude. That's a very close 50-50 in my opinion. Mackenzie Hughes, if you're going the course history route, Lucas Glover, if you're going the course fit route. And I know that's not an answer. I know it's a little bit of a cop out there by giving you both, but it's that close. So if you prefer the course history this week, which at Augusta National is probably the way to look at it, I'd go Mackenzie Hughes. Max House says pick one, Mackenzie Hughes, Zach Johnson, or KH Mackenzie Hughes, no doubt for me there, Max. Definitely Mackenzie Hughes, especially because he's going to be relatively low owned like the other two options. And at major championships, he has the preferable game. That's for sure. He's got the well-rounded skill set, the ability to get up and down. He's a really good putter, which of course at major championships is going to do you service because of how fast the greens tend to run. So would definitely be Mackenzie Hughes for me. All right, I'll go ahead and bring up the player pool here. We'll go ahead and talk through a few lineups. We're going to start with a GPP lineup. So we're going to start with some of that large field type of strategy that I was talking about, where as long as we're not spending all of our salary, we could pretty much take whoever we want. So I'm just going to show you what that would look like. Let's say you like some of the chalky plays like JT, which I completely understand. I'm definitely going to be playing some JT this week. Let's say you want to get yourself some of the chalk in the 9K range as well, right? So if you do those chalky plays, Jordan Spieth's going to get some ownership. Same thing with Brooks Koepka. Didn't mean to click Hideki. We are not playing Hideki this week. I want to go ahead and make sure that's clear right there with the injury. We're not playing Hideki. Meant to click Brooks, though. Of course, coming in as just an absolute stalwart in major championships. It's also going to be a little bit chalky, so we'll deal with that later, though, like I said. So that puts us at $7,500. Now, I'd ideally like to try and take somebody here in the 8K range. Adam Scott definitely stands out to me. But we're in a large field GPP, so I'm going to go ahead and try and take more of a high upside play, like Terrell Hatton there, but he's maybe a little bit cheaper than I'd like to go. Joaquin Niemann, also a high upside play here in a major championship. But I do like Sungjae M. The reason why I like Sungjae, he's one of the lower owned options in this 8K range. Like I said, we don't have to obsess about ownership just because I am not going to be spending all my salary. Also because I don't have the super chalk in my player pool. But it's always nice to get some leverage. And for Sungjae M, he has the course history I'm looking at and the skill set for the golf course. Gains across all four major statistical categories. That puts us at $7,300. Now I want to take a higher guy in the 7K range. Matt Fitzpatrick, like I said before, is one of my favorite plays on the slate, so he definitely makes sense at $7,700. Now we're at $7,100 remaining per player, which really is closer to $6,900 remaining per player because I'm going to try and leave some salary on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and take somebody towards the bottom of the 7K range. Absolutely love Max Homa this week. Probably my favorite play on the slate. And now that we have 7,100 remaining, really 6,900 because I'm trying to leave some salary on the table, Gary Woodland would be my last man in. I'm comfortable with every single player in this lineup. You can see there's some chalk like Homa. Homa's going to be in that 12 to 15% range. Fitzpatrick might be 20% owned. You're going to get 20, 25% on Justin Thomas. But because we take guys like Sungjae and Gary Woodland, who I have projected for less than 5% ownership right now, and of course we leave that $200 on the table, I'm comfortable entering this in a 196,000 entry contest in maybe being duplicated with 1 to 2 people. Now, I'm showing this here on the live stream. Every single time I do this, people go and enter this lineup. So it's not going to be the case with this exact combination specifically, but that exact kind of mindset is what I'm using when I'm building a lot of my lineups for this week. So that's going to be for the main GPP build. We're going to do a single entry build here. So I know in the past, I haven't been quite as keen to actually making the single entry lineup, but we're going to get back to that here because it's a little bit of a different mindset. So when you're playing in a single entry, you only have 1,000, maybe even just a few hundred entries to compete against. Leaving salary on the table isn't something that I think you have to do. And I also think you want to be a little bit more balanced. Of course, when you're trying to finish in that top 25% against just fewer entries, you don't have to be nearly as perfect. So let's go ahead and talk about how I would construct that lineup. So for this, I'm actually going to live in the 9K range. Absolutely love Jordan Spieth this week. I talked about it before. Absolutely love Brooks Koepka. That's going to be a consistency between both of these lineups. And that still leaves us with $7,700. So we can live in the 8K range as well. Absolutely love going to Adam Scott. He's a core pick for us. We're at $7,500. Probably a little bit too expensive to go to Shane Lowry, or else he would be somebody I'm trying to click on there. But let's go ahead and put Joaquin Niemann in there. I like his upside, especially for some of these GPP contests. And even though this is a single entry contest, right, we don't want to be thinking cash terms. We still want to be thinking in GPP mindset, still looking for a top end upside play. So that's why I'm willing to get to somebody like a Joaquin Niemann. That puts us at nearly $7,200 remaining for both of these guys. I like taking Mark Leishman. I know I mentioned him as a core pick this week. And at $7,000 remaining, we don't have to leave salary on the table, but in terms of the guys that we have left here, Woodland is my favorite play. So I'm okay with leaving $100 on the table here. If there's somebody you'd rather upgrade, so let's say, right, you don't want to take Mark Leishman. You'd rather spend up and take Billy Horschel. go ahead and make that upgrade, right? And this could be a lineup that you go with here in a single entry contest where you're being a little bit more balanced about the build just because you're trying to fit in as many guys into that top 20 as you can. And you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have 6 of the top 8 in a single entry contest to win. Whereas if you get, let's say, 6 of the top 10, you're pretty much going to be guaranteed to take down that contest. So that's why I go with a little bit more of a balanced, or let's say conservative approach here for these single entry contests, but not completely conservative, right? These aren't just guys that I think make the cut. They still have some of that top end upside. And now lastly, let's do a cash lineups, put together my optimal cash lineup for this week, which, like I was telling Chris Palmer before, I think we should try and be a little bit more, let's say, balanced with our build than we would be with a lot of our other lineups. So I still like taking JT, especially because he's chalky. I think that makes a lot of sense here for cash. But trying to spend down a little bit, right? So rather than trying to fit in another guy in the 9K range, we're going to try and be a little bit more balanced about our build, try and take salary into mind a little bit more. Adam Scott's one of my favorite cash plays on the slate, so I like him there, $8,300. Also like Terrell Haddon in cash. I think he has a very consistent skill set, particularly for this type of venue. Matt Fitzpatrick's one of my favorite plays on the slate. That puts us at $7,850 remaining. Now, Joaquin's not somebody I'm actively looking to use in cash. Shane Lowry might be, so let's go ahead and see what it looks like if we add Shane. That puts us at $6,900, and I hate to use Gary Woodland in all 3 lineups, but I like him that much this week, right? He's a core pick, and he's only 4.5% projected owned, which is just way too low for him. And based on his recent form, where he has 3 top 10s out of his last 4 starts, I don't think there's any reason not to play Gary this week. So in cash, this is going to be the lineup that I'm looking at. Like I said, it's relatively balanced. Tons of guys here in the 7 to 8K range. You still have one 10K option, but the quote-unquote value pick that we're going to is a very consistent Gary Woodland, at least over the last 4 events. So definitely like him there at $6,900. Catch him on chat, see if there's any questions. Are we going to go to Nakajima or no? Not me, myself. I just think it's a little bit early. I want to see him perform before we go to him. Maybe if this was a smaller field event, if this was a regular PGA Tour stop, I'd be a little bit more willing to, but maybe not so much at a major championship. I'd like to see it at least once first. And Cap City Code says, who is the chalk this week? So we don't have to guess on that. I'll just show you the projections, show you who I have as the chalk this week. So we go ahead and bring up the projections. We'll organize this and sort this by projected ownership. So give me 1 second here, guys. Alrighty, so I have this sorted by ownership right now. So the guys at the top are going to be the chalk. So Justin Thomas, Corey Connors, Cameron Smith, Matt Fitzpatrick, Russell Henley, John Rahm, Siwoo Kim, Xander Schauffele, Brooks Koepka, Sam Burns, Paul Casey, Will Zalatoris. We'll cut it off there. That's going to be the quote-unquote chalk. That's going to be 13% plus owned. So the guys I have down as red, right, are the guys that are starting to get extremely chalky, right, when you get that 14% plus range. But that's the answer to your question right there, man. I appreciate you guys stopping by as always. Of course, the Masters this week is going to be an absolute blast. Really looking forward to it. If you guys are watching this in replay, do not be shy at all to ask any questions you have. I'll try and get back to you. Trying to get back to you before lock tomorrow morning, but no promises there, especially if you message me at like 3, 4 in the morning. I'm going to be sleeping like anyone else. So try to get the questions in as soon as you possibly can. I appreciate you guys. Good luck with all of your lineups for this week. We will have showdown content coming out for the weekend, so look forward to that. Live streams that I would assume 7:30, maybe 8 p.m. And then over the weekend, we'll also have some prize pick stuff coming out as well. So best of luck, guys. Best of luck, Matthew. Hopefully you have a solid weekend this week, and I'll see you guys next time.